Welcome to the Gab Show. I'm Gabby Johnson, and happy holiday. May you be well, may you be safe during this season of holiday.
Hello, I am Melissa Tenzer. Welcome to the Gab.
Joseph Halsey here. Merry Christmas, everyone.
So we have a show packed of great things to set you up for next year, 2023. Melissa, what do we have?
So we have Eric Poe coming in. He's talking about becoming an entrepreneur and his success with the Lobby Club down in Trenton, which is great. It's a club for everybody, but they have a lot of lobbyists and business people there. And then he's also going to talk about NJQ and Pure Insurance, how we all got started and everything about being an entrepreneur and taking it to the next level.
So, and that is right. Entrepreneurship is like a big thing when we start the beginning of the year, right, Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. You're an entrepreneur yourself.
Sometimes, yeah. We are entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs is a tough road to haul.
All right.
You have to be willing to lose and make a lot of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
That is right. What is the segment you covering?
Oh, I get to hang out with our co-host and friend. Ty is actually going to get interviewed because he has all these awesome, amazing tips about how not to spend too much money at Christmas. I think there's some stat like, people take 5 months to pay off their Christmas debt or something like
try
that.
to use the cash. Don't overspend.
Yeah,
Don't
use
use
the
your credit
cash.
card if you can get away with it.
But I can't wait. I'm hoping Ty will help me with all my financial situations.
Yes, he's a financial advisor. Can't wait to hear from him later and have him back on the show.
That's right. So we have entrepreneurship, we have financial tips on how to really set that money aside for 2023. And then we have Charles Hills, who will join us later on, talking about workforce and how today challenge can actually be a blessing.
Oh, absolutely. The workforce is going to be great to talk about getting into the new year, too, because Charles Hill really focuses on the youth. And he talks about getting people past minimum wage without having a degree. So he really has a certain population to say, I'm working with these youngsters. They have a great transferable skills. They have a desire to make more money. And he works with the youth to say, you're not getting a job at minimum wage. We're going to try to get you up to the $55,000 a year. And he works with Fortune 500 companies internationally and nationally to be able to do that. So he's amazing. He's an amazing guy. I can't wait to hear some of his tips.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yes.
I love that idea. I mean, if you take a look at, our higher education now, there really isn't anything to teach you to start a business. I mean, because it's hands-on, starting a business, being an entrepreneur really is hands-on, and you learn by, like I said, you learn by losing, and you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot. I mean, that's what it takes, the sacrifice, because you're going to give up a lot in your personal life and a lot of things that other people will have for a while in order to achieve your goals.
That is right.
So hopefully Charles tells us how to do that.
I know. We want to know, Charles.
It will, absolutely. But I think a question of entrepreneurship, and of course, Eric will cover that, will be that really is the way that you are able to switch when the challenge is not working for you, or the plan that you originally set didn't work. Then you are able to constantly switch, modify, change, and perhaps even completely throwing out that plan to reinvent a whole new plan.
Yeah.
But we are very welcome that you have joined us. And today, Melissa, please introduce our wonderful guest.
We are so thrilled to have Eric Poe here today. Hello, Eric. How are you?
Good. How are you?
We're doing great. He's from New Jersey Pure and Cure Auto Insurance. He's the CEO and he's the strategist, but he does so many things in the community. He also opened up with some partners, the Lobby Club in Trenton. So that's a big part of economic development. And we want to hear from you a little bit about the workforce and how you hire great people to start off. So that's, as an entrepreneur, you have Tara, who we love at the Lobby Club. And we want to hear about how you do the hiring there with all of your companies and everything that you're involved in. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then about how you hire your great people.
Okay, well, I think we have about now total between about 400 employees between Michigan and New Jersey. I think the biggest tool, and this will probably sound like a sales job for the company that we use, but there's a company that specializes in trying to figure out personalities. So we actually screen every single person that ever interviews for a job. We don't even care about their resumes. So we make them take a personality survey, and based upon the results of that survey, we fit people in the appropriate positions that might help them thrive in the actual job itself. Because often interviews, people, it's the best sales job they can do for 15 minutes. That doesn't, then you hire someone and you're like, well, this person said that they work so hard and their biggest flaw is that they're such a hard worker and they're a perfectionist, and they come and work for you. And you're like, well, this person's making all these mistakes and they don't care. And it's because they just did a great job of selling you for 15 minutes.
I do remember when I was an entrepreneur, I still am, but when I had my staffing agency, that you did have every individual take that particular test. And what I do now, and I know the name of the company, but we don't want to give a plug for that, but it really does, like, is somebody consistent? Are they accountable? Like, do they think outside the box? Every position's a little different. So that's cool that you still, all these years later, use that. And I'm sure it's advanced because the workforce has advanced. So,
well, I think that, what it teaches you is that there is no perfect person. So if you're a person that's a natural born risk taker, the last thing you should do is surround yourself with risk takers, because they're going to sit in a room and they're going to tell you, yeah, let's just take the risk. So the whole point of the personality survey is to assemble the right team, because there's always going to be blind spots for everybody. So a person that's averse to risk is going to actually really help the person who likes to take risk. And you take that in combination with their cognitive assessment, and that's how at least we feel like we've done a good job of assembling a really good team.
So the mindset of a entrepreneur, when you do that test, what are you looking for?
So it depends on what job it is. So for somebody that's a controller that's looking at making sure that our financial statements are correct, we look for somebody who's analytical and more set on protocol and making sure that they're a perfectionist. But if you're looking at somebody who's going to be a business development person, we look for somebody who's a risk taker, somebody who can build relationships really quickly. So in that personality survey, that plays like a huge role in deciding who we're going to hire for that job.
And I know you cannot trick those tests very easily.
Yeah, it's funny. You can't. And the worst part is that even if you did trick somebody, then you're going to be in a job that you don't like. So, if we have a marketing director job and somebody tries to trick it and thinks that, okay, I know that they're trying to hire somebody to be outgoing and extroverted and assertive and a risk taker, but really they're conservative and they're an introvert, they're going to get into a job that they don't like and they're not going to be good at that job. Right. So really that's the reason why, even if you trick us, you're probably going to find out real quickly that it's the wrong thing to do.
So Eric, how about the growth of your organization, of your insurance company? Because I know that I see you all over the place and it's not just New Jersey. Tell us about that growth and adding the Pure and the expansion over the years. Because I know, like you said, you have 400 employees. Back maybe 5 years ago it was
actually 2 years ago.
I'm thinking last time it was about 250 employees. So that's really new for me too, to hear that it's 400. That's extreme. So how did you get there?
So really, in our world of insurance, we have a lot of bean counting people with a lot of algorithms. So it's really hard to find an opportunity. So for our growth pattern, it's really finding a reform law or something that's challenging the state. And when there's a new reform law, the environment changes so dramatically that even the big players, the GEICOs, the Progressives, the multi-billion-dollar companies that have hired thousands of employees to analyze a market, they're catching up trying to figure out what's the impact going to be of this new law. So our business strategy is really either creating a new law or helping forge a new law to create a new environment, or looking and analyzing a new law and saying, okay, I think we might know something more than what our competitors know in that space, and then entering into that marketplace. So that's what happened in Michigan. There was a new law for the first time in 46 years. I was fortunate enough to be involved in actually writing the law. And so when the law got passed, we saw it as an opportunity to say, why don't we actually come in the marketplace before the billion-dollar companies come in there and see if we can beat them to the punch in terms of analyzing the impact of that law.
Well, that being said, I've actually had the pleasure of hearing you talk about, and you're a true champion for people who are underserved and are having issues with their credit score, or because of their zip code are not able to get insurance, or their insurance is higher. I would love for you to speak on that a little bit, because I did have the pleasure of hearing you speak on that, because that's impressive.
Well, it's a scary thing, but before the Civil Rights Act was passed, life insurance companies used to actually know, and we all know this statistically, that blacks in America would live shorter lives than whites. So life insurance companies in the industry in America prior to 1964 and the Civil Rights Act would simply ask in the application for insurance, for life insurance, what was your race? And if you said that you were Black, you would get the most expensive rate and you would actually get half the benefits. But once the Civil Rights Act was passed, they said you can't use race as a factor anymore. The life insurance industry, some of these insurance companies simply deleted the question of race, and as a proxy substitute simply said, what's your highest level of educational attainment and what type of job you have? And so what they previously had for Blacks, they put in there as shoe shine boy, bus boy, waiters, and they said highest level of education, high school. And they didn't change anything else. And that proxy component was something they found that they were still doing all the way up to the year 2000. So after the internet was actually born, there were still life insurance companies did this. And then what happened was in 2004 in the state of New Jersey, the Department of Insurance allowed insurance companies to start using credit scores for the first time. And then we found out that there were some multi-billion-dollar companies using educational attainment and occupation as well, giving the best rates for the people that have four-year college degrees or graduate degrees and high-paying jobs. And the reason for that is because profitability in my industry of car insurance is tied to income. So any proxy that can derive a correlation to income, my industry will try to adopt it because it generates better profits. Unfortunately, I wasn't raised that way to A, give up a fight, and then B, to adopt practices that we know surreptitiously cause people that are, less fortunate to be behind the eight ball already. So I fought for about 16 years, still trying to get this bill passed in the state of New Jersey. The bill's been introduced every year for 16 years. And despite the fact that other states have passed this ban, we still haven't got it passed in the state of New Jersey.
Well, thank you for doing that. And that can roll right into, the Trenton Economic and Development, your work there with the arena and everything else. Tell us about your work in the city.
Well, Trenton has always been puzzling to me because I've argued a few cases before the Supreme Court as an attorney. And I always go to Trenton and I always say, geez, it's amazing. We, have to come to Trenton all the time. There's tens of thousands of workers in Trenton. It's our state capital. And every single year that we would have to hire lawyers to go to the courts in Trenton, because there's a federal court in Trenton, there's a municipal court in Trenton, there's a superior court in Trenton. I would always say, this is amazing that there's not a restaurant in Trenton, that there's nobody stays in Trenton past 5 p.m. that works there. And it's really a shame that there's not more of an investment in our state, in the infrastructure of Trenton. So we took that as an opportunity to start finding opportunities where we could help support Trenton. And one of them being the naming rights of the Cure Insurance Arena, which is a beautiful arena. I don't know how many people have been there.
Of course we have.
All of us.
I mean, it's sad. We used to have, I think, a minor league basketball team, or there used to be a minor league hockey team.
Yeah, the
And
Devils actually.
Yeah.
They're minor.
Yes.
They're junior league there. Yeah.
It's really weird because if you talk to the people involved in that arena, they say that they compete with, the biggest problem with Trenton is not that the facility doesn't hold 15,000 people, not that it's beautiful, it doesn't have suites, all the things you would expect, right? It's just that the industry of concerts and the industry of these multi-million-dollar sports teams are that they're concerned that the people who go to games in North Jersey compete with the people in Philadelphia, and that if you put a attractive venue to go, see an event in Trenton, you're going to cannibalize Philadelphia or cannibalize North Jersey. And I say they're insane. I totally disagree. I think there's enough people in Mercer County and Bucks County that are dying to go there.
It is actually the best hub when you think about Trenton being actually in the middle of New York and Philadelphia.
Right,
it is the perfect hub for that. But going further down into that Trenton development, because I think there is a lot of stigma into it. As by example, when you go to the arena, it's great, it's beautiful, but then the people, would they go and discover things around it, and what is going to be happening?
Yeah, I think one of the funniest things that someone taught me once is perception is reality, right? And so when I was hoping to help Trenton a lot more, I was saying, you got to start at image. The reality is there are sections of Trenton that why are we grouping it all together? Let's come up with a subsection of Trenton and call it something, call it the Cap City District or the Restaurant District or something, so that when we refer to it, we're not just going, Trenton, and maybe somebody's getting mugged or somebody's dying or there's a body that comes out in a river, right? You know what I mean? Let's start with that. Let's start with street lights. Let's start with optics. And instead of trying to ambitiously go in the whole city of Trenton, find an area that we can carve out. And that arena is a perfect example. It's right by Route 29. It's not by an area that you should be worried about, right? And they should have support of the government. The state should be pouring billions of dollars, not millions of dollars. I know they've spent a lot of money on redoing some of the buildings that the state workers work in, but infrastructurally, I think there needs to be somebody that says it's about time that we're not embarrassed about our state capital.
Oh, I agree.
Yes.
Talk about the lobby club, because I remember when you were thinking about opening it up with your partners, we were in your basement, you were having a party, and everybody's like, "You're crazy. The economic development trend, it's never going to work." And I was one of the first people that knew about that down in your basement years ago. Talk about when you got started, how it's doing now, because people really, our producer was there yesterday. It's wonderful. And again, it's members, but there's a lot of people in Trent that need that lunch spot to go. Talk about how you're doing now.
So we're doing really well. We have about 120 members. We have about 2 members join a day, and really we got killed with COVID. But the reason behind it is really kind of a short, long story. But I'll just say that the advertising firm that we use at Cure Auto Insurance about 15 years ago, the guy produced and came up with the Kool-Aid mascot. He came, the big picture.
Right.
And he also came up with a few award-winning commercials. And he said, look, the reason why I'm successful as an independent entrepreneur in advertising is that I work with a business to try to understand their business before just advertising. And he told me this story that one of his clients was Richard Branson in the late 80s, early 90s. And he said, Branson tried to launch an airline. And a time where no one was trying to launch airlines. TWA was folding, billion-dollar companies were just not be able to survive. And he said that this was right after Lockerbie, and there was terrorists that were bombing, planes, and no one was flying. But his first route for Virgin Atlantic was between London and New York. Yeah. And he called up the head of the advertising agency, who was a colleague of mine, and he said, "Listen," Richard Branson got on the phone and said, "Listen, we got to fold. They're 100% right. Nobody's flying on our planes." And the owner of the agency, Alan Kay, said, "Well, Rich, when you say nobody's flying, can you just describe to me who's actually flying?" And he said, "Well, we've got about 20 people and 15 of them sit in business class." So he came back after about a day and he said, "Listen, Rich, I have a question for you. There's like 2 things I need for you to concede. The first one is, can you tell me whether or not you can rip out 2/3 of your seats of your airplanes? And then I want to know, also on top of that, will you accept frequent flyer miles from British Airways immediately?" And I said, "Well, why did you say that?" He said, "Well, because this is what I've learned, that people travel for work, not necessarily because they want to. It doesn't matter how scared they are. They have a job. They got to put food on their table for their kids." He goes, "The people that you're describing have to fly from New York to London, whether they want to or not. So the problem is your biggest competitor is British Airways, and the only way we're going to get these people over is if they lose their frequent flyer miles and you accept them immediately." So the advertisement was about how they accepted everybody immediately from all their miles from British Airways. And what it dawned on me was that at some point in my life, if I ever find an opportunity where people don't necessarily want to do something, but they're coerced to do it because they have to do it to maintain their job. And I thought to myself, Trenton, it's a perfect example. 40,000 people, 25,000 people go there every single day. But if you ask people, where do you like to work? They might say, I want to be in Princeton, right? But they might want to be in New Brunswick, but they got to go to Trenton.
Right, exactly.
So I looked at that as an opportunity to say, like, if we can carve out a restaurant, if we can carve out an area where people can do business, and these lawyers that you're paying $500 an hour to go to the courthouse,
they would love a place.
but they can't even a cheeseburger or a steak or a martini.
And all the business.
And it's so spotty as well. You have a good place, and then not so many shops afterward because they close, or they have those signs on. So yes, carving a space. But the story of Virgin is an amazing story, because I remember that story when they started, and actually I was in Switzerland, and I love that airline because they really reinvented the whole industry of service into the airline industry, and that for me is also the focus of what an entrepreneur is today. Give us what is the challenge of an entrepreneur today?
Oh, well, the biggest challenge is making sure that you're not too risky.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
risk.
I think entrepreneurs all have one thing in common, is that they don't necessarily see risk as risk. They see an objective and they say, how am I going to reach that objective? They don't think of failure. And then sometimes you're sitting up at night going, did I really think about everything that we did? But for me, I think the biggest challenge is making sure that I surround myself with people that are the opposite of me. So, in my chief litigation officer is a woman that, was a clerk for the Supreme Court and went to Michigan law. But if you looked at her personality index, she's always going to be telling me the risk of everything. And she's always going to be like, well, Eric, you think this or that. And I'm very aggressive. So
You
when
are.
it comes to litigation, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to win this case. And she'll sit in a room with me and be like, well, this is what they could also allege, and they could do this and they could do that. So to make a reasoned decision, the key is making sure that you don't have yes people in the room. You know, I think that's the biggest risk I
people
have.
can challenge you.
Nice.
So is that how you start
Very nice.
to build your executive team? You always find those who can challenge the opposite of what you are.
Yeah, and I would say the honesty and building that trust. So one of the things that we embark in my organization is that we have a mindful leadership PhD who comes in, and every 2 weeks when we have a leadership meeting, we meditate for 10 minutes in silence,
Yes.
you know, and we try to learn about how to better effectively communicate and be vulnerable, because you know, if you look at most of the conflicts in any company, it's usually about effective communication. We're all wired differently, right? So what might be a reason as to why I'm getting upset about a project not being done on time might not be the same reason as to why you're not getting that project done on time.
Right.
And for us not to understand each other and be able to effectively communicate in a way that we're all on the same level playing field, saying we're going to try our best effort to be vulnerable with how we speak, and realize that words are only put in meaning from the receiver, not from the giver. Because very often people will say, well, that person said this to me, or that person condescended to me, and they put the responsibility on the other person as to why they're reacting. But what we try to teach in our leadership team is like, the meaning actually comes from the receiver. And the best way that our mindfulness leadership coach says it all the time is, well, let's explain to you how communication works. If the person that offended you was speaking in fluent Russian, how would you have reacted in that scenario? And the person who doesn't know anything about Russian would say, I would probably not even get affected because I wouldn't even know what they're saying.
Right.
And then you say, okay, well then by definition, you are defining the fact that you are putting the meaning into those words, because you can choose to have no meaning to those words.
That's true.
So I think making sure that your leadership team does not get caught up in the semantics of words and thoughts, and trying to make sure that we all understand on a level playing field, you know, emotional accountability is what our goal is. Because I think you spend more time getting upset at work about the person that you don't like, or the new boss that you have,
Right.
or,
And the
you know,
leadership.
like somebody that's underneath you, or somebody
Yeah.
that's with you that's not pulling their weight, and you're getting frustrated. And are you going to be passive aggressive about it? Are you going to start saying it, right? I mean, that's what I think
Absolutely.
we spend a lot of our time doing.
Yes,
Right.
that is absolutely the truth. But what is the magical moment where you really don't like that person, and no matter
Gabby, you
You
said,
say they don't fit the profile.
there's
That's
Gabby
what you
being
do right from the
passive
beginning,
aggressive.
right? You
I
interview, and
get
if they
the
don't
clue.
fit
I get the hint.
profile
I'm
and
seeing it.
They have a tougher personality, then you make the decision based on that.
Well, you know what we've learned is that, you know, they're either mindful people or they're not. And when you see people that raise their energy and get very upset and they act out, they're usually resisting something. But the easiest way to display that is to be the most mindful person there is and being vulnerable. And that person will find themselves screaming in a room by themselves. And sooner or later, that person will identify that the insane person is the person who's screaming at somebody who doesn't even say anything back. So the goal is to hold people accountable, but in a vulnerable way, to where you don't actually raise your energy. So that person becomes the screaming person in the room that identifies and confesses to the rest of the world, I'm the person who can't handle this, not you. So eventually, if they don't produce, you have empirical evidence to show to that person and say, look, I've come to you. We brought these things up, and you document it, and hopefully
Lots
at
of
that point in time,
documentation these days. So I know that you do a lot for the community, obviously, and we have an event, Dress for Success, A Day in Her Shoes, which is coming up March 29th. So we're excited to partner with the Lobby Club again. Talk to us about other events that you do with the Lobby Club.
So about, I'd say, half of our events are fundraisers for legislators. And, I think that's what happened when De Lorenzo's, the steakhouse, got demolished. There used to be a place where the legislators, lobbyists, and lawyers would all meet for a 2-hour lunch back in the day when people had martinis in the middle of the day, and we had 50% of the business people being alcoholics. But I'm not necessarily sure.
But the good news is you walked right out. The train was right there. So you just got on the train. Nobody was driving. Let's keep that
Why does
straight.
it sound familiar to you?
Because it was my hometown. That's how I put myself through college.
He was in the
Was
restaurant business,
bartending
too.
in the restaurant
Oh.
business in Chambersburg. So I'm Italian. So I'm going to push back a little bit with you, Eric. When we yell and scream, that just means we're passionate.
Right.
That's the Italian version of it, because
Yeah.
everyone, and unless you yell and scream at our dinner table, you're not going to be heard. But then everybody hugs and kisses and tells each other they love each other. But that's just culturally. That's
That's
not
true.
appropriate in the business. But back to Lorenzo's, yes. We did
Yes.
have an amazing steakhouse, but we also had 40 restaurants back in the day.
Yes.
And we want those restaurants to come back. Hopefully, you're the
Yeah.
start of things getting back into Trenton and people having places to go when they walk out their doors. The lobbyists, the business people, but also the locals. So we hope to see that happening soon. So congratulations congratulations on the
Thank you.
restaurant. That I
Thank
was there
you.
opening night.
Yes, you were.
I didn't get in the commercial though.
No, you
They
did.
shot a commercial somehow. I didn't make
How
the
did you not
commercial.
make the
How?
commercial?
I tried to get in everywhere I could.
We'll get you in another one.
So, Eric, before you leave us today, do you have a message right here for our viewers?
Ooh, the message is, I think the biggest problem that we have in today's society is just being accountable for your own feelings. Like we're always trying to hold everybody else responsible for the feelings that everyone else has, right? That you have yourself. And instead of always pushing everybody else to say that you're responsible the way I feel, let's do some accountability in ourselves. That's number one. And I always feel like the two things that I try to tell everybody, at least in our own work environment, is to be passionate about something, stand for something, don't give it up, and to be vulnerable in the way that you communicate to people. Because otherwise, when you take that passion, like sometimes I would testify and I get very passionate, and people misinterpret that as arrogance. And I think that my biggest challenge for myself is to always come off more vulnerable so that people will hear you.
Good
Thank
message.
you. Thank you so much, Eric, for joining us.
Eric, thank you for
today.
being
It was
here.
Thank you for having me.
We really
Honor.
appreciate it. Great tips.
Thank you.
And happy holiday.
Thank you.
Happy
You too.
holidays,
Yeah.
Erico.
Thank you.
See you soon.
This holiday season, no matter where you go or what you do, remember the importance of thinking local first. Our small businesses in our community depend on you to spend your holiday dollars locally.
Welcome back to the Gab.
Welcome, Charles Hill. Please introduce yourself to the GABS viewer.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Charles Hill. I am the Director of Enrollment for an organization called Year Up Enrollment Solutions. We're a national organization, 22 years. We have over 25 markets all across the U.S. And my role as Director of Enrollment is I find talented young people between the ages of 18 and 29 who are interested in IT, finance, or project management, train them, guarantee a paid internship for them, and ensure that if they successfully complete the internship, they're placed in a Fortune 500 company throughout the U.S.
All right, Charles. Well, that is awesome. And Melissa already had done a little intro in the beginning and talking about, what you do with the youth. So, but let us know, how do you reinvent yourself today in the marketplace?
Great question, Gab. I think from a workforce standpoint, the first and foremost thing when you reinvent yourself is acknowledging that the field of jobs right now is entirely open to what you want to do and your passion. No matter your age, where you come in the workforce, you have to come with a certain amount of openness to challenging yourself. One thing we learned post-COVID pandemic is that right now a lot of people are able to regroup and transform themselves. They didn't have to be locked in jobs that they felt they had to stay in just because of the wages or that's who they were because of their career trajectory. We now find that people can pivot and identify jobs that they want to be in. There is, quite frankly, even though there's a large amount of labor interest, we're in a labor shortage because people are changing jobs so much. So you can really now identify the job you wanted to be in. If you want to invest additional time in training, there's funds, there's programs like mine to support you. And then from there, once you fit in a place that you're happy with and you enjoy, the trajectory for you to be promoted and move very fast in that field is very high right now because of the interest. And what you find from an employer standpoint is that there's much more interest to invest in employees to retain them. in those positions. So whether that be college funding to support employees in those jobs, whether it be other incentives, maybe even childcare subsidies and other areas to make less barriers for their employees there really is an emphasis and an incentive from employees to ensure that folks like you stay in those jobs.
So I have a question
That's
for
right.
you, Charles. So
Right.
you worked in the county in workforce development, and obviously, you know, this is almost like a staffing agency. How do people get the jobs today? The workforce is forever changing. I owned an employment agency for 18 years, and things are just evolving all the time. So how do people find the jobs that you're placing? I mean, right now you're working with the Fortune 500 companies, but how do they get the resumes? Do you talk to us about that process a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah, we want to hear
So
what's
much
going on,
that-
especially with the youth.
Complicated. That
Especially with the youth.
resume
Yeah.
process is so hard.
Yeah.
It is. It's
Right?
hard to maneuver through. So how
It
did
is.
someone get the job? How do they stand out? And talk to us about the process, how
Yeah.
they find you and how they get those opportunities.
So the great thing about us being a 22-year organization is we've understood more about the barriers to employment and how to resolve and address them. So for us, we've created through our CRM, our client relationship management tool, a way that young people who are interested in Year Up, and they can simply go to our website, www.yearup.org, and just say they're interested in a job. They identify the market they're in because we're in 25 markets across the U.S. And then from there, someone from our recruitment team will reach out to them and then put them in our database. And from there, there's an application. It takes about 10 minutes. It's not a resume requirement. That's a set of questions about your interest, because the only thing we require at Year Up are three things. We require you fit in our age group, 18 to 29. We require that you do not have a college degree. We are doing what we call non-traditional career pathways.
Okay.
So we're training young people who don't have college degrees with the skills they need to get the job. And we're just focused on those skills. And that's the second thing. And then the third thing is just have a passion. You know, we interview
Yes.
our young people based on their passion. I heard Eric Poe talk about a performance index. We do something similar with our young people. We want to understand what is their personality index, what is their approach to life, what is
drives
their
them.
drive, what's their grip. And based on that, if they have those things, we'll place them in our program. And like I said, we place on average a year a little over 4,500 people
That's
a
excellent.
year, with a
Yeah.
10-year goal of placing well over 12,000.
So
Can
I like I like the fact that you introduced that personality things, because you know it seems to be so electronic our days that it seems to be very impersonal. So thank you to introducing that into your program.
And you don't want to put somebody in the wrong job too. That's what the personality. Somebody goes into a job and they say they can do good,
It's
do
not
well
for
in
them.
sales, and it's not for them because they
Yeah.
exaggerated on the resume. They get in the situation, they get in the job, and they can't do it. So you're stopping that from happening. So you're really saving people from changing jobs too often to understand their background. But I know you had a question.
I really like the thing that you said about you're looking for folks that may not have gone the traditional college route. So how would someone know that or get in touch with you other than a website? Like, do you guys reach out to folks? Is there like some sort of a community outreach to let people know that you exist? Because we had some great conversations out there, but I wasn't familiar with the organization. So
right.
how would someone who is like,
Find
college isn't for me,
Yeah.
but I wish I had a way to get to something that would be meaningful to me, like you just said, how would they find you, or how do you reach out to those folks?
Great question. So being that we're an older organization, as an organization, we have over 900 employees across the U.S. We have an old footprint in New York, specifically, well over 15 years. And we have a more recent footprint in New Jersey, almost a little over 8 years. But we have most of our Jersey work historically has been North Jersey. And the way we do that is we have a recruitment team, we have a recruitment manager, we do outreach, we attend events. We have an office as part of Hudson County Community College in Jersey City, and we do a lot of outreach there. And we have a actual MOU partnership with Hudson County Community College that they even support us on recruitment there, because the notion is, even though we don't take people in with a bachelor's degree, we do take those with an associate degree, because sometimes you get an associate and you're not going to transfer over to the bachelor level. So that's a great recruitment pool for us. I will say for Mercer County, Central Jersey, we're looking to expand. We've had some conversations. And it's kind of great how I'm here, because I really want to advertise Year Up to say, for those that are interested, look at our website. will be closely expanding in the Central Jersey area.
Excellent.
We like to identify those young adults who can, transportation-wise, get to where our corporate partners are located.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Charles and I were talking about working together, which is great. That's how, we talked about coming on and talking about workforce. But what's very interesting about that is give us a success story. I know you've been here for a while now, but when you make a placement of somebody and you just really push them and help them to get to that next level, they don't have the education, they don't have the confidence to be able to do it. And you, Charles, work with that individual and you give them hope that they too, even without that education, because they're the people that get lost, can make that salary of $55 an hour. Give us a success story, if you will, because I love those stories. That's what it's all about, the messaging.
Yeah, well, I tell you, there's so many, but I can tell from my role and kind of looking at people. I was just in Pittsburgh because we have an office there, and I was working with a young individual who, for our purposes, we have a relationship with BNY Mellon, and we have 2 tracks there: investment operations and application development, which is coding. And the person really liked video games, right? And they really, they got their GED, they love video games, and they were trying to understand like how to do something based on that passion. I said, well, listen, this application development track we have teaches you how to code. It teaches you Java, JavaScript code, and teaches you language. But then guess what? You'll be working potentially in cybersecurity, doing coding for BNY Mellon, understanding the whole process. So the young individual who just had the GED, who didn't know what they wanted to do, but just knew they had a passion for video games, ended up getting accepted to our program, going through it, and now is working for BNY Mellon, making a starting salary of $50,000.
Wow.
So
that is a great story.
So, continuing on that the beautiful story, what are the hot jobs out there?
Yeah. well, it's a great topic, and for my role, I market kind of where we see the job trends at Europe, and for us, there are 3 main areas: IT being one, and as I talked about, application development, that's within IT coding, but you also have IT help desk and some other areas. The second area is finance. Some people look at finance and think, oh, I need a college degree to be in finance. We're training young people to be in investment operations where they're working with teams that are actually talking to Amazon, some major companies, on how to invest their money. So from an investment operations, from a finance standpoint, there's a lot of training available, and it's a growth area. The third area, which we see trending more on the West Coast, but certainly coming on the East, is project management. There are a lot of certifications and trainings in project management that are growing in the industry. And I will probably say the fourth, which we're growing in, is the life sciences area. Life sciences, particularly in this area, is huge. And I know a number of hospitals, pharmaceuticals, and others have areas that you can get really good, high-paying jobs without having a college degree.
Could I ask, is there a major difference between the folks that you help in working from home versus working on site or at the location? Is there like a good mix between the two? Do you only focus on one area or the other? Like, how does that work?
Great question. And I'll say it's a scale question for us, because the more young people you want to target, it's easier to target them in terms of training them in a virtual space.
Okay.
So we can expand our programs based on more having training providers that train people nationally without having to physically be in a classroom with them. So there is a scale. But the in-person piece, I'll tell you what we found, even for our organization, is there's no replacement for a human touch. People can provide better mentorship, better coaching, better engagement, and better understanding of the responsibilities and the roles they want to have based on having some kind of in-person touch. So I think you really have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of both, but the ideal would be probably some kind of hybrid model where you can do both.
So Charles, how does social media play a part? We talk about with the youth, watch what you do on social media, everything that's going on with TikTok and the government in China and all that kind of stuff. What do you advise people? And do you, like we talked about when you're doing the personality profile, when you're making those hiring decisions, do you look at people's social media and does that impact the hiring decision? And if you're allowed to say, that might be some secret information, HR type of thing, but I think it's important. But what do you see? What do you think personally? And also what does, Europe think? So.
Yeah. So high level, and this is kind of the understanding we approach with social media from a recruitment lens, the most of our interest in Europe happens through our digital marketing and advertising. So that means that we're really reliant on young people being on social media, being on Instagram and Twitter, because that's the easiest way they connect to Year Up. Now, if you inverse that, the advice we give to young people is be careful what you put on social media because it follows you. And we want to understand, and what we do with them from an essential skill standpoint is that we're training them not just from an understanding of what the type of role you'll be in, but how to thrive in that role, how to give a firm handshake, how to to put up a LinkedIn page that is representative of who you are,
and that you follow,
that others follow, right? And I follow.
Right. Thank you so much. So we want to
Excellent.
thank you for being here today, Charles. Year Up. We're so glad you're doing great work in the community. I'm sure we're all going to be seeing more of you and partnering with you, everything workforce into the new year. So thanks for sharing your tips and everything, Charles.
Yeah,
thank
we appreciate
you.
We got to get you into Mercer County.
Yeah,
we got to help out with that.
Community College.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'd love to get you more involved with them.
Thank you, Charles.
Thanks for being here, Charles Hill.
Remember to think local first when spending your holiday dollars or more. The small businesses in your community are the ones that step up when you need a sponsorship, a donation to your baseball team, or a nonprofit charity. Remember, in order for our community to thrive, shopping local allows your small businesses and your community to thrive.
Hey, welcome back to the Gab. All right, my friend, co-host, and commandant is here to talk about money. I need money help, bro. I need money.
Our financial advisor is in the house.
Okay.
Let's talk.
Tell us, Ty. Give us some tips.
Let's talk, Ty. All
Let's talk.
seriousness, we a lot of people, especially now post-COVID,
Mhm.
everybody had to get back to work. We're back in that grind of living paycheck to paycheck. What kind of advice do you have for
Not Ty.
For
No.
people?
Ty
to,
doesn't live paycheck from paycheck.
Never.
For people to conserve themselves through the holidays, so we don't carry so much debt into the new year.
Well, I think one of the first things I'll say is that you really have to take a self-assessment, right? So as a financial planner, I'm always trying to talk with clients about making sure you know where everything is and where everything's coming from. So got to kind of ask yourself a question like, where am I at today? Where would I like to be? Can I get there, right? And then once you know the
That's a
answer to
big
those
question.
questions, then you can kind of say, hey, I want to do this. This is where I would like to be. Can I get there? No. So why don't I get some help? Why don't I seek some help? As far as the whole question of getting out of trouble, I'll say, from the holiday spending, my response to you would want to be, don't get into trouble to begin with, right?
I know, but
Don't overspend. That's the first
how do you
thing I
not
would tell you not to do.
Give during the holiday
Don't go to too
season.
many parties.
And look
Yeah.
at the stat where people go in debt for 6 months. They're paying their credit card
Yeah.
for 6
Credit card.
months.
It's
Right.
it's definitely planning, right? Because for me,
That's
if I
what
go
it
to too many
is.
parties, like for instance, I bought all these candles. I went to parties early and I gave them away. Now I have
Trying
buy
to
more, so now
overdo it.
I'm overdoing it. I'm going to
Yeah.
too many parties.
So then
spending
you're
too
the
much money.
Grinch.
So no,
Right.
so what you got to do is so this is great that we're talking about this now because it's the end of the year, right? But
Right.
it's also the beginning of a new year. So
Right.
Yes.
ask yourself those questions, and then
Yes.
you know
Which
this
question?
season is coming, right?
Yeah.
Like, where are you right now?
Mm.
Let's get you out of the credit card issues, but you also want to just say to yourself, okay, if I need to purchase something, I have the cash or the funds to make that purchase. So how I teach my son who's in his 20s,
Right.
says, you know, he has a card, and I say, you never use that card unless you actually have the cash. So
I like that.
use the card to
Pay
pay
off
for
when it
something,
comes
$100
in.
bucks, pay the $100 off.
Right.
If you can't afford to buy that with the card,
Yeah.
then don't buy
Don't
it.
buy it.
But don't be a Grinch.
But-
Don't buy it yet, because we all want
Well,
to splurge
we do.
sometimes,
what,
right?
Right.
what happens if I'm an impulsive buyer?
We got to just talk, guys.
Yeah, you need to
That's
go
a whole
offline.
different thing.
Yeah,
That's a new
Yeah,
segment.
that's another.
I have a
show.
question for you.
Yeah.
When you're talking about planning for the new year and everybody says, okay, let me look at my finances. Let me decide where I'm going to invest. Let me decide if I'm going to do retirement, 529. You have kids that are going off to college a couple
Yep.
years out. How do you decide whether you put money into your retirement at the same percentage
Or the
you
college
put
fund.
the 529, the college
Oh.
fund? And with the market the way it is, this morning I saw
Yeah.
my 529. The loss of a lot of
I
money.
get
I'm
this
not going to say the
question,
amount.
yeah.
So I'm like, you know, again, financial advisor. You have to, yeah, exactly. You need to tell
So,
us where do you put your money. Retirement obviously is very important, but then the
Mm-hmm.
529, you know, again, it creeps up so quickly when kids are going.
so
What's your advice?
I'm gonna say something to you that I hope helps and resonates, which is
Do I have to pay you for it?
no, it's all we're on the gab. We're good.
Yeah,
right?
we're all friends.
So
here. We're all friends
I'm
here.
going to say to you something that, and I don't want you to do this, but I want you to kind of take the concept of you cannot borrow for retirement.
Right.
So you need to save for your retirement. Right?
That's good
You can
advice.
borrow. You don't want
Very
to. I
nice.
wouldn't want you to borrow for college, but you can
Right.
borrow for college. You
Yes.
cannot borrow for retirement.
Yes.
So you don't want to
Right.
wind up putting so much into college
Mhm.
that you neglect yourself,
Yes.
and then you're stuck
So you're saying I
in
should take a lien
retirement.
on my house, right? I should take a lien
No,
on my
no,
house.
no, never,
You can
never.
borrow.
No, 'cause-
for retirement.
No, no.
That's
You
really
know.
good advice because you can't. You
You
right,
can't borrow
now,
for
but you
retirement,
can't borrow-
right?
Yeah,
And then
that's very nice.
it comes down to like figuring out a way to like pay down that debt. So one of the things I would also tell people, especially getting started in the new year, is to make sure you ask yourself those questions. And then one of the first things you should try and do is create an emergency fund for yourself.
Yes.
Like emergency funds are
Under your mattress.
that's a place, right? You won't earn much there,
Now
but
we know where to look at your
Isn't that holiday party at your house? What the hell?
but that is like a major thing it's
Yeah.
like it's almost like boring, right?
Right.
But it is something that is major, right? So when people are trying to plan, I always believe in there's probably 3 different types of goals when it comes to planning. Two of the major ones is a short term, which is maybe you need these funds within the next 12 months to 24 months. And then there's a long term. We always think about retirement, 10 years or more or something, right? But if you don't do both, when an emergency happens, you're going to tap into your 401k or your IRA, and that's a
Yes.
huge mistake.
And then you have a lot of tax.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. And
You
penalty.
don't want to do that.
Taxes and
and
penalties, right.
penalties.
I have a question. I mean,
I
did
do.
who
Don't
pay
do
for
that.
your college?
I pay for my college.
Exactly. So there you go. Let's let the new generation pay for their college as well.
That's along the same line that you
You're
can't
right.
borrow for
Yeah,
retirement.
let
You
them
gotta-
have some
That was
skin in the
just
game.
it.
Let's see how it works.
I have another
I agree
question,
with
Ty.
that. It's gonna
Right.
be-
Okay, so most people, they have their 9 to 5 job. They have their check coming in. It's always the same. They can say, I put this much for grocery, this much for fun, this, that, and whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened in the life of an entrepreneur? Because we were talking about that earlier, where really, your paycheck goes like this, goes like that.
Yeah,
it's never the
very-
same.
Yeah.
So what can I do as an entrepreneur to put that Christmas fund aside?
That's
So-
hard.
So I'm going to tell you something
He's not a miracle
that's
worker.
boring again, but like I always say when I'm talking to clients, like some people think that the word budget is like a 4-letter word. That's like cursing at someone. But realistically, it actually gives you freedom. Like if you actually budget what you are going to spend on each item, it'll actually free up money for you. I know it doesn't sound like it does, but it really does. If you know where everything goes, you know how much you're spending. I do this thing with clients when I tell them to write down everything you spend and everything you spend every month on all your bills and everything. And they realize that like, hey, I'm actually spending like hundreds of dollars on takeout every month. Not realizing
adds
that
up.
on
That
Friday
home
night,
cooking is
Saturday, Sunday, you might
Yeah.
go out for Sunday brunch. You order out on Friday because you had a long
Used to
week.
love
You don't
that
want to
living in
order.
New York.
The kids want to treat on Saturday, and you wind up spending on one weekend. You wind up spending like $150
I eat out a lot
or something.
myself.
That's it.
It's
150.
So-
Right,
Yeah,
yeah,
you get it on
that's it.
cheap.
That's it. That's what I'm
That was
saying.
20 years
So
ago.
imagine if you're doing that.
Matter
If
of
you're
fact,
doing that
the
every
ad is
week.
going out after this. We're all spending money after this to go out
$2.
together. $2.
Yeah.
I have a question.
But it's all budgeted. For
How about for vacation? People say, and people definitely look forward to vacation, but people say if you
Yes.
don't have money for vacation, don't go. But it's such an experience and livelihood for the kids.
Yeah.
What do you tell somebody
you
that
put it
says,
on the credit
I
card?
only put it on the credit card?
You
What do you tell
should.
people that say, I really want a vacation, but I'm saving for college? You know, as long as they can pay their rent or their mortgage and they're getting through month to month, do you think that that's important to go on vacation? And would you advise them to?
So,
Don't
so
go
that's like a trick question.
Don't go to a
For our Gab
five-star
viewers, that's a
hotel.
trick question.
He's an
Go
insider.
camping.
That's a
Todd,
trick question.
tell the truth, Todd. Don't.
Because
Don't fall victim.
I personally love to vacation.
I know.
So I would never tell someone not to go on vacation. But
So Expedia is your next
you don't
gift
have
card.
to necessarily go on this lavish vacation
Okay.
every year.
Look,
You
every
see?
other year.
Then if you go every other year, it goes back to the budget and figuring out like
Right.
how much do I put away so that you
Yeah.
ever go on a vacation and you just are so mad at the fact that you have so much credit card debt or
Yes.
nothing in the bank.
Not
When
a
you get
habit.
back home,
I'm from Switzerland. I'm
you
a
get
Swiss
back
bank.
home. Oh,
Yeah.
well, you're good.
I think about that.
But a lot of
year.
people do that.
But I
Yeah.
budget
A lot
for
of
it, think
people are
about
like,
the whole
man,
year.
I spent
Vacation
so much on
remorse, buyer's
vacation.
remorse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everyone has buyer's remorse.
Or they
Buyer's
are like
remorse.
upset that like
Yes.
they couldn't
Where you
spend as much
spent.
when they were there.
Yeah.
No, that's
I
one
sweat.
thing. You can't spend enough. And again, you have
Yeah,
to
you
look at the
can't spend
hotels. You
enough.
have to look at
Yeah.
making it
Oh,
a
okay.
smaller amount of time period.
Right.
But yeah, I think vacation's important. And again, staying.
Yeah, but there's
If
you
limits.
budget- if you budget for it, you can
listen,
spend
we
as
live
much
right
as
near
you
the
want.
Jersey Shore. If you want to take, like when I was a kid,
Day
going
trips,
down to the
beach
shore for the
vacations are
day,
unbelievably
hitting
great.
Stewart's root beer on the way home.
Yes.
That was a
There
vacation.
you go. There you
That
go.
was.
That was
That's
a
good
big
shit.
Money and
vacation.
you could pay
Seaside
with-
Heights
pay with
and Stewart's
cash
root
And
beer.
back
that,
then.
and that goes with the pine hanging things in your car and the coffee and the
Yeah,
the-
pine. Pine. Gabby's talking about pine. What do you mean?
We were talking about summer. We were talking about getting our tan.
That's
Listen,
fine
my-
for air
my-
freshener.
my financial
going to the
advice.
Jersey Shore.
My financial advice is this: let's all go to Gabby's house and hit her mattress, and we'll all.
Yeah, that's where she keeps all the
Let's
cash.
go.
That's where we're
at.
getting the cash.
Yeah.
That's where we're getting the-
That is an investment.
That's where the party is.
That's
You're having a
investment.
party.
And depending on how much
Good.
she has, we can put it toward the vacation fund too. So
Right. Let's see if we
Stock
can-
up, Miss Gabby.
That's good advice. That's good
Yeah,
advice.
but let's check this out. Where,
Yeah.
where
How
do
about
you
the holidays?
where do you want to go on vacation next?
Oh, I can't tell anybody that.
He's
When I go on
super
vacation,
secret.
I don't want anybody to know.
Okay, what about
You don't
you,
want
Ty?
to. You don't want to
That's
know
what
where you're
vacation
going,
is.
but yeah, when you're going.
I
That
wanna go
may
to
be-
Yeah, no.
Cancun?
Yeah, Cancun in the spring. I take a spring break and go to Cancun.
Cancun. Last time you went to
Mexico.
Paris, so that's 2 years on a row, though.
That's what I'm
That's not
asking.
Oh,
that's
see.
not good
I need
budget.
You gotta check. You gotta check your.
Wait, and you have
Melissa.
college. You're gonna have to skip the vacation.
She's got a lot
Either
going
that,
on
you gotta
here,
tell the
like-
kid she has to pay for college.
She has
Sorry,
to pay for her own college because I'm
Sorry,
going away
young-
again. That's
Wow.
a terrible
Sorry,
move.
little
My,
Mimi.
my wife picks
College is
our
on you.
vacation.
Your wife picks the vacation?
Yeah,
Awesome.
so she has right now.
She has a
like
budget.
Four options. Yeah, they're already paid for. She just has to pick where she wants to go.
I do save on vacation.
Yeah.
I save for years for my
I
European trip.
gotta send Mike to your training house.
Yeah,
How about for the holidays? How about for New Year's?
Yes.
What's everybody doing for New Year's?
yeah.
And do we have plans? And are we keeping
I can
it
tell
within
you
budget?
this:
Uh-huh.
it's my 24th wedding anniversary, New Year's Eve.
Wow.
You got married on New Year's Eve.
I got married New Year's
Man, you see,
Eve.
you're smart. See, that's
Nice.
I can never
You don't
forget, Joseph. I
You
can
don't
never
forget.
forget.
You put it in the middle of the year. You don't
And
forget.
and there's always a party to go to. So I
Right.
really don't have to
Right.
plan anything.
No, you just
I'll
buy
just figure out where
present
everybody else is
and-
going.
Is
I'm
it
like,
24 special or is it 25 is special? Or is every year
25, I
special?
think, but
Okay,
it's
every year
all special
Hey,
for
kudos
me.
to
Every
you.
year.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a long
Just in
time.
case she's watching, you better say
Congratulations.
that.
And you still look happy and you're still smiling. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
important.
great.
What's
24 years.
what
That's amazing.
gift you give at 24?
We're live,
Diamonds.
Gabby.
It's
I don't
always
want to
diamonds.
reveal my
Ah,
always
showmanship
diamonds.
of like.
It's always-
No, for you it's always diamonds.
Where you
Like,
going, Gabby, you're getting very personal today. So
Maybe a little Pandora.
Oh, yes,
Sure.
I
I think it
heard.
should go
I
away.
heard it was a
Man.
great gift.
I got that from Joe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you see, last
Yeah,
time,
it's a
right?
good idea.
how's
I was
everybody
listening,
else?
my
And
But
friend.
now they got a line outside. You go to the mall. Every store is empty. There's a line around the corner for
That's
Pandora.
right.
I'm like,
I
see,
know.
so
Because Joseph is holding
Yeah.
the line.
That's right.
Where is the party for New Year's?
Yeah, at
Where you
Melissa's
guys
house.
going?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
No,
Melissa.
I'm having a Christmas Eve. You guys are welcome to come
Well,
to
wait.
my house.
I
for
just
Christmas
jumping
Eve.
back. We jumped forward.
Christmas
Now,
Eve.
now
I'm
we're
telling you,
at
that
Oh,
was
no,
my
now,
party
now
this
you need to
Christmas
do
Eve.
a New
All right,
Year's
so what are you doing for New
party.
Year's?
Yeah, New
Yeah,
Year's.
what's
I'm going
New
to
Year's?
Stella.
Ah,
And Bobby Flay's person that beat him in the competition is the chef. He's coming in just to Stella. In
There's
New
like
Hope.
20.
Nice.
Yeah, well, there's
20.
one. There's only one or two that beat him. I heard. I don't know. I don't know the story.
Why-
All I know is when I got the text, I said, "Bobby Flay's coming. I'm in. Buy the ticket." Next thing she was, "It's not Bobby Flay himself. It's the one that beat him in the competition."
It's all
Oh
about
my God.
It's about the details.
So I overpaid
Melissa.
for Stella. No,
Yeah.
You know what'd be great?
I don't know.
You know what'd be great if we asked the Gabs, our
Viewers.
viewers, like, what's a
Ask
good
them.
thing to do for New
Yeah.
Year's
Yeah.
Eve? Like,
Yeah.
Gabby, you're
Tell
having
them
a
to
New Year's
send in
party.
us,
I thought
like,
you were having the New Year's
good
party.
do you
ideas for
want to
New
have
Year's
a
Eve.
New Year's party? Are
New
you
Year's
going to
party.
come?
After Stella, I'll stop by.
Oh, okay. Now I have a
Yeah, ask the
Mike.
viewers, like,
you
what's a
better
good,
get
what's some
started.
good ideas,
Yes, Mike.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Viewers, if you are watching the Gab right now, share your comments into the comment box and tell us what you do for the New Year's, right?
How about
Yeah.
resolutions? Does anybody believe in New Year's
Ooh.
resolutions? And
Yes,
if so, what
I
are they?
do.
I believe in them. I
I
really
do.
do. I think it's a
Yeah.
reset time.
It
I
is
do
a
my
reset.
yoga.
You are?
No.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's
That's
true.
you.
That's right.
That's
I'm
mine.
not a relaxed person. Remember, I don't do yoga.
I do yoga to be relaxed.
Yes.
I've been
exactly.
thinking about
How
that.
about you? What are you doing, Ty, in the new year? What are your
I don't
resolutions?
know.
What are
We're
some
going to
things
do
you
a
can get your
yoga
house in
class
order?
for the Gab
I don't
people here.
know. That's a good question. Maybe I gotta ask myself that.
I'm
in the
going to
next
join a
couple
gym.
weeks.
That's something that I've never done, and
Ooh.
I'm not disciplined in that way. I walk my hairy dog, and we go for miles and miles, but I'm not disciplined, so I don't have the
Okay.
the big muscles in my arms. I'm going
Right.
to change that in the new year.
What
Get
gym,
my
All
what gym
right,
are you
that's
going to
good.
join? I'm going to let them know.
To watch out for her.
Horse is coming in.
Yep.
Yeah. But what about
What
you,
about
Joseph?
you,
What do you got going
Joseph?
on?
I make resolutions every Monday. When does Monday
Okay.
fall in the new year?
Okay.
I make a
When's
new
the first
resolution every
Monday?
Monday. I wake up
You're
on
very
Monday
disciplined.
and go, what the hell did I do that for last week? We're not doing that this week, and I move on. So
Okay.
the year doesn't
So
matter.
you're constantly.
I am.
resetting.
Constantly
That's
have
Gabby,
to
how about
reset.
you?
I am taking a resolution right now
Okay.
because of my friend Ty. I am going to budget my vacation this year.
Oh, that's good. That makes
You need
this
to
all
go.
work
That's
So,
out.
that,
You
good
like
job.
the getaway. You work so hard to
Yeah.
get a beautiful getaway.
And when you go on vacation,
I
you
think
can
of you.
spend as much as you want because
And have a drink.
it's
saved all these years.
Yeah, it's all
Yes.
ready to go.
There you go.
So when you go,
I better
it's less
start
stress.
saving right away, like yesterday.
So you think like you gotta buy
Well, it
like
depends on how
souvenirs
much
and
she
stuff.
saves. Ty's showing
She
saving
can spend as
$100.
much as she wants
She's
out
going
of
to
the
the Jersey
budget.
Shore
She's
in the
going to
winter.
the Jersey
In the
Shore.
winter.
In the winter, Asbury Park.
Right.
Asbury Park.
You know,
They have things
splurge.
going on. They have bands.
Yeah.
Stone Pony is still somewhat active.
It's
You can
okay.
go there.
Well, they have the outside.
for
but you know,
me,
they don't
for
do
me,
that
the
around.
New Jersey Shore is very
I think-
exotic.
It is. It's very
Yes.
exciting.
We'll go on a
Yeah.
Gab tour all together.
Yeah.
That's
we'll
right.
film there.
Either
for
that, or
Alright.
you could take that
That'd be
$100,
nice.
go down
That'd
to
be really
AC,
nice.
throw it on a table or two. And
Oh,
see how,
that's
no,
not
Right.
a good move,
no,
Jill.
no.
Let's go to Vegas instead.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. We are all here wishing
yes.
you a beautiful, awesome, healthy, and safe holiday.
Enjoy.
Oh, we
Happy
won't see you till
holidays.
after the New
See
Year.
you
Happy New Year.
2023. See you
See you
next year.
See you
Thanks for watching The
2023.
Gab.
Peace.